Ya, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Muhammad FAEZ bin Muhammad, and I am going to present about the proposal for my final year project. My title for the project is the study and analysis of magnetic force based on Lenz law for hybrid generator development. And my supervisor is Muhammad Saiful Bahari bin Syari. The content of my presentation is start with the project summary, followed by introduction, literature review, problem statement and objective, scope and limitation, methodology, and for the last part is the expected result. We move to the first part, which is the project summary. The summary of my project is about the hybrid generator. As we know, the main source of power for the for development of hybrid generator comes from the magnetic force of the solenoid. My focus of the study is that to determine or calculate the magnetic force generate by this electromagnetic system. And for the variable, I choose the cross-sectional area of the solenoid and magnet as the variable for the study. For the system mechanism, the first energy is the electricity will be applied to the solenoid, and the magnet will pass through the solenoid, which will produce the magnetic induction and transmit into the mechanical energy. And for the last one, it will produce the electricity. For my relationship of the study is I want to determine the influence of cross-sectional area of solenoid and magnet towards the force generated by this electromagnetic system. We move to the next part, which is the introduction and the background of the project. For the background of the study, which is the, as we can see here, the or main renewable energy comes from the hydropower, which is high cost for to which is consume a lot of cost to develop the hydropower. For the second one is the wind turbine. The third one is the solar and other renewable energy come which less contribute to the electricity produced. And the idea for the development of hybrid generator is to support those who live distant from core area and electricity grid. And this hybrid generator use the concept of solenoid based on Lenz law and Faraday's law, which mean the Lenz law and Faraday's law will be the main equation for my study. And the next aim is to replace the diesel generator by developing the alternate supply of energy, which means it will save a lot of cost to develop or establish. And for the third part, we move to the literature review. We search for the previous article published which are related to our study. For our study is about the renewable energy. We search for a study on the renewable energy. Start with the turbine, which means use the air movement to make the blade of the turbine move. However, this turbine renewable energy has their own pros and cons. Same goes for the biomass, solar. It has their own advantage and disadvantages. For example, biomass, it needs a lot of wastage to produce a small amount of electricity, which come a little bit of burden or difficulty to produce enough electricity by using biomass. Okay, we move to the next literature review, which is the study on the MATLAB, which is the MATLAB train concept. Use the same concept for our hybrid generator development. It uses the linear propulsion induction engine and incorporates electromagnetic levitation suspension, which means the repulsion from the magnet from the same pole is the same idea that we have identified in the MATLAB concept. For the Lenz law, which the law that we mainly use for this development, the current generated by magnetic field difference in a circuit is directed against the flux change and result in mechanical force and oppose the movement. The move of magnet bar in the solenoid will produce the electromagnetic force, which also induce the magnetic field from the solenoid. And the next one, we use the Faraday's law, which means the EMF is more a voltage than a force, as it is potential to supply energy. We will use this formula to calculate the force, electromagnetic force. And the second one, and the next one, we use the Lorentz force to calculate the force created by solenoid. And for the last one, the hybrid generator, this is the prototype or the design of our hybrid generator. We will focus on the solenoid part here in the right box here. The magnetic power will be converted into mechanical energy, and the generator, it will generate the electricity and turns it back into electricity via through the generator. And for the problem statement and the objective, as we know, every single type of renewable energy will have their own pros and cons. For the solar, it will have it is quite a problem or issue for the place or country that has the nighttime is where the nighttime is longer than the daytime. For the wind turbine, it needs the consistent or sustained wind movement to move the turbine blade. And for the biomass, as I stated before, a lot of wastage need to produce a small amount of energy. And we come with the idea for the hybrid generator development, which one of the key factors that contribute to the efficiency of the system is the size of the magnet, which means the size of magnet and solenoid in this electromagnetic system will affect the force generated by the system. Also, when there is the difference in the size, which means it will affect the gap between them, which means the air gap will be different once the size of magnet and solenoid change. And for the objective of my study is to determine the mechanism of electromagnetic system to produce linear motion of magnet. And the second objective is study the effect of different size of solenoid and magnet towards the force generated. And here we will determine how the size will affect the force generated, whether the bigger in size of magnet will produce the bigger force generated or vice versa. And the third one and the last one is to increase the force generated by the electromagnetic system by using N52 magnet. The type of magnet here is the constant variable for my study, which means we will use the N52 magnet all through along the project. And for my methodology of the project is here is the sequence or the step that I been done to while doing the methodology. For the first one, we will do the research and establish equation, which means we determine the suitable equation that need to be used for calculating the magnetic force generated. And the third one is develop magnetic field, which here I will be using the multi-physics console. And the next one is the sample testing, test analysis, and result evaluation. For the research, we need to determine the magnetic force generated by electromagnetic system and influence or the effect of the change in cross-sectional area towards the force generated. As I said before, the variable for my study will be the cross-sectional area of solenoid and magnet. And the next step, I will establish the fundamental equation, which these two equation here will be used to find the Faraday's law will be used to determine the electromotive force, and the Lorentz law will be used to calculate the force generated by the system. Okay, the next part I will develop the magnetic field. Here is the magnetic field I have been developed using the multi-physics console software. As you can see here, the blue part here is the air domain and consists of solenoid and magnet in it. And the linear motion of the magnet will be moved in horizontal axis. And for the test analysis, the Lorentz law will be used to determine the force generated by electromagnetic system. The change in the area of magnet and solenoid cross-sectional area will affect the gap between them. Any change in magnet or solenoid will affect the gap between them, and it will affect the electromotive force of the system. For the result evaluation, the value of solenoid will be compared to force generated by a magnet with the variable is, as I said before, the variable is cross-sectional area. The evaluation for the project is in terms of the cross-sectional area of solenoid and magnetic force generated. Okay, we move to the next part, which is the expected result. For the expected result, we will go through for the solenoid force, which means the changes is the solenoid cross-sectional area. There are 3 different cross-sectional area, and it will affect the length of gap, which means it will produce the 3 different length of gap. And the constant variable here is the number of turn, which is 800. And as you can see here, for bigger cross-sectional area of the solenoid will produce a bigger number of solenoid force, a bigger magnitude of solenoid force. And for the second expected result, based on the magnet, I will use 4 types of the magnet, 4 different size of the magnet, which mean the 4 different size of cross-sectional area of the magnet. As we use the same magnet type, which is the N52, it has the constant permeability, and here is the 4 different gap between solenoid and magnet due to the difference or change in magnet area. And for the force generated, I have been calculate using the Lorentz force. As you can see here, the higher number of cross-sectional area of the magnet will produce the higher force generated. And I think that is for the expected result. And we move to the project planning. For the whole semester, this is the planning and the actual and plan, which is we start with the project discussion until we write the full thesis of this final year project 1. And for my title is to determine, which means to analysis of the magnetic force based on Lenz law. Based on Lenz law for development of hybrid generator, we can conclude that the higher of cross-sectional area will produce more magnetic force. And that's all for my proposal presentation for my final project 1. Thank you.